Don't wait for success to find you. Go and take it. In a small village nestled in the rolling hills of the countryside, there were two boys, childhood friends who had grown up together amidst the green pastures and the tall, whispering trees. Their names were Jake and Oliver. From the outside, they seemed to have everything in common. They both came from hard-working families, they attended the same school, and shared many of the same hobbies. Yet, the paths they would take in life could not have been more different. Jake was the kind of boy who always looked for an easy way out. He believed in luck, in fate, and in waiting for things to come to him. He often spoke about how one day success would simply knock on his door, and he would be ready. "There's no need to rush," he would say. "Everything will work out as it should." Oliver, on the other hand, was a dreamer and a doer. He knew early on that nothing worthwhile would come to him without effort. He believed in hard work, perseverance, and in taking risks. "You can't just sit around waiting for success to find you," he often told Jake. "You have to go out and take it." Despite their differences, their friendship remained strong. They spent their afternoons fishing by the river or hiking through the hills, laughing and talking about their futures. But as the years passed, their lives began to diverge. After finishing school, Jake chose to stay in the village. He loved the slow pace of life, the familiar faces, and the comfort of knowing his place in the world. He took on odd jobs here and there, mostly helping his father on their small farm or working at the local pub. He was content, or at least he convinced himself he was. He believed that one day, an opportunity would fall into his lap, and he wouldn't need to go looking for it. Oliver, however, had bigger dreams. He left the village, moved to the city, and enrolled in college. It wasn't easy. The city was fast-paced, competitive, and often lonely. He worked long hours, juggling multiple jobs to pay for his education. There were times when he felt like giving up, moments when the weight of his dreams seemed too heavy to bear. But deep down, Oliver knew that nothing worth having came without sacrifice. He believed in his ability to create his own future, even when the path was uncertain. Years passed, and the village grew quieter for Jake. He had settled into a routine, but there was a growing sense of unease that he couldn't quite shake. The excitement he had once felt for the future began to fade, replaced by a gnawing feeling of dissatisfaction. He watched as others in the village left to pursue their dreams, while he remained, waiting for something, anything, to happen. One day, while sitting at the pub, Jake overheard some of the older men talking about Oliver. "Have you heard?" one of them said. "That boy Oliver, he's made something of himself, owns his own business now. Can you believe it? Came from nothing and built it all himself." Jake felt a pang of jealousy. He hadn't heard from Oliver in years. Their lives had grown apart, and although they had once been inseparable, they now lived in two entirely different worlds. Jake's heart sank as he realized that while he had been waiting for success to come to him, Oliver had gone out and taken it. One evening, a few weeks later, Oliver returned to the village for a visit. He hadn't forgotten his roots or the people who had shaped his life. He sought out Jake, eager to reconnect with his old friend. They met by the river, the same spot where they had spent countless afternoons as boys. The air was thick with memories as they sat side by side, the gentle hum of the water filling the silence between them. "Jake," Oliver began, "it's been too long." Jake nodded, unsure of what to say. He could see that Oliver had changed. There was a confidence about him, a quiet strength that Jake hadn't noticed before. "I heard you're doing well," Jake finally said, his voice tinged with both admiration and regret. Oliver smiled. "I've been fortunate, but it wasn't easy. There were times when I thought I'd fail, but I just kept pushing forward." Jake looked down at his hands, the familiar sense of disappointment washing over him. "I guess I've just been waiting for the right opportunity, for something to come my way." Oliver turned to him, his expression serious. "Jake, you can't wait for success to find you. It doesn't work like that. You have to go after it, chase it down. You have to be willing to struggle, to fail, to start over again if you must." Jake sighed, the weight of Oliver's words sinking in. "I always thought if I was patient enough, things would work out. But now I see I've been stuck in the same place for years, while you went out and made something of yourself." "It's never too late, Jake," Oliver said gently. "It doesn't matter where you start. What matters is that you start. Jake felt a flicker of hope, but doubt still lingered. But what if it's too late for me? What if I don't have what it takes? Oliver smiled again, but this time there was a glint of determination in his eyes. It's never too late. The only thing holding you back is the belief that you're stuck. You have to stop waiting and start moving. Every step you take, no matter how small, brings you closer to where you want to be. Jake looked out at the horizon, the sun beginning to dip behind the hills. For the first time in years, he felt a stirring inside him, a call to action that he had long ignored. He realized then that success was not a matter of luck or timing, it was a choice. It was about taking control of your life, embracing the challenges, and never settling for less than what you were capable of. As they sat by the river, the two friends talked late into the evening, their conversation weaving between the past and the future. Jake knew that his journey wouldn't be easy, that there would be struggles and setbacks ahead, but with Oliver's words echoing in his mind, he felt ready to begin. The next morning, Jake rose early, the dawn light spilling into his room. For the first time in a long time, he felt a sense of purpose. He wasn't going to wait for success to find him anymore. He was going to go out and take it. And so, the story of Jake and Oliver reminds us all that success isn't something that happens by chance. It doesn't come to those who wait. It comes to those who dare to chase it, who believe in their own potential, and who never give up on their dreams, no matter how far away they may seem. Jake's transformation wasn't instant, but it was steady. Over the next few days, he began to reevaluate his life. He realized he had been drifting aimlessly, hoping for a break that would never come. He decided to stop relying on chance and instead take control of his future. His first step was to make a plan. Jake sat at the small wooden table in his kitchen, a notebook open in front of him. For the first time in years, he began to write down his goals, something Oliver had encouraged him to do. He knew he had no grand business ideas like Oliver, but that didn't matter. What mattered was finding his own path to success, one that suited his skills and passions. Jake thought about his strengths. He wasn't highly educated, but he was resourceful and hardworking. Growing up on a farm had taught him how to fix things, how to work with his hands, and how to manage the land. Maybe, he thought, there was something he could do with that knowledge. Slowly, an idea began to form. In recent years, the village had been growing, with new people moving in from the city looking for a quieter life. Jake had noticed that many of these newcomers weren't familiar with rural life. They didn't know how to maintain their properties or repair equipment. There was a need for someone who could offer handyman services, someone who understood both the old ways and the modern conveniences. That's when Jake decided to start his own small business, a handyman service for the village and the surrounding area. He would offer everything from basic repairs to landscaping and even farm maintenance. It wasn't a glamorous idea, but it was something he could do well. And most importantly, it was something he could build from the ground up. With a newfound sense of determination, Jake spent the next few weeks preparing. He saved up what little money he had, invested in some tools, and printed out simple flyers to spread around the village. He visited neighbors, spoke to the newcomers, and offered his services at reasonable rates. At first, the work was slow to come, and there were moments of doubt. But Jake kept reminding himself of what Oliver had said. Success wasn't going to come knocking on his door. He had to go out and take it. Word spread, and soon enough, Jake's reputation began to grow. The villagers trusted him, not just because he was skilled, but because he was reliable and honest. He didn't promise more than he could deliver, but he worked hard to exceed expectations. Little by little, his business expanded. He hired a few young men from the village to help with the workload, teaching them the same skills his father had taught him years ago. 1 year after he started, Jake's business was thriving. He wasn't wealthy by any means, but he had built something he could be proud of. He no longer waited for luck or chance to change his circumstances. He had taken charge of his own success. And in doing so, he found a new sense of fulfillment that he had never experienced before. Then, one afternoon, Oliver returned to the village again. This time, he wasn't there just for a visit. Oliver had decided to invest in the local area, opening a small café and bookstore in town, a place where locals and visitors could gather. He had learned that success wasn't just about making money, but also about giving back and building something meaningful in the community. When Oliver saw Jake again, he couldn't hide his pride. "I've heard the news," Oliver said, smiling warmly. "You've built quite the business here, Jake." Jake laughed, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's nothing like what you've done, but it's mine. I've worked hard for it." Oliver placed a hand on Jake's shoulder. "That's all that matters. It's not about comparing what we've achieved. It's about knowing that we didn't sit still and wait for life to happen to us. We went out and made it happen." The two friends walked through the village, reminiscing about the days when they had been boys, filled with dreams they barely understood. Now, as adults, they had walked different paths, but both had found success in their own way. Jake had learned that waiting for success would never lead to fulfillment. It took effort, resilience, and sometimes failure to carve out a future worth living. As they stood on a hill overlooking the village, the sun beginning to set behind the horizon, Oliver turned to Jake and said, "You know, I used to wonder if we were too different, you and I, but now I see that we weren't so different after all. We just had to find our own ways to chase what we wanted." Jake smiled, the wind brushing through his hair as he gazed out at the village, the place that had always been his home. "You're right," he said softly. "We just needed to stop waiting and start moving." The lesson was clear. Success doesn't come to those who wait for it, sitting idle in the hopes that life will change. It comes to those who take risks, put in the effort, and believe in their ability to shape their destiny. Jake had once waited for success to find him, but now he understood that the only way to achieve it was to chase it down with relentless determination. And in the quiet village where they had both started, two friends stood side by side, knowing that they had found success. Not in the same way, but with the same belief that no dream was too far away for those willing to take it. As the days turned into weeks, Jake and Oliver's friendship grew stronger, rekindled by their shared understanding of life's challenges and rewards. Though their paths had diverged, their journeys had been marked by the same key realization. Success wasn't handed to anyone on a silver platter. It had to be earned, fought for, and shaped through hard work and persistence. With Oliver's cafe and bookstore becoming the talk of the village, Jake's handyman business flourished even more. The newcomers who flocked to Oliver's cafe often found themselves in need of repairs or services, and Jake was the first name on everyone's lips. His reputation was spreading beyond the village, reaching neighboring towns and small cities, where people began to seek his services for more substantial projects. For the first time, Jake found himself facing a new kind of challenge: growth. One evening, after a long day of work, Jake found himself sitting by the river, much like he had in the days of his youth. This time, however, he wasn't waiting for answers or for life to unfold. He was reflecting on the choices he had made, feeling a deep sense of pride in how far he had come. As he sat there, Oliver joined him once again, holding 2 cups of freshly brewed coffee from his cafe. "You look deep in thought," Oliver remarked, handing Jake a cup. Jake chuckled softly, accepting the coffee. "I've been thinking about what's next. Business is growing faster than I expected, and I'm starting to realize I can't handle it all on my own anymore. I might need to hire more people, maybe even expand into the nearby towns." Oliver raised an eyebrow, impressed. "That's a good problem to have, Jake. It means you've built something people value. But you're right, scaling up isn't easy. You'll need to make smart decisions, especially when it comes to hiring the right people and managing a bigger operation." Jake took a sip of the coffee, letting Oliver's words sink in. "I know it won't be easy, but I'm ready for it. I spent too long sitting around, waiting for something to happen. Now that it's here, I'm not going to let it slip away." Oliver nodded in agreement. "You've come a long way, Jake. I've always believed in you, but seeing the transformation firsthand is something else. You've taken control of your life, and that's the hardest part." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The river flowed quietly before them, a constant reminder of the passage of time. Yet it was also a symbol of the steady, unyielding persistence needed to carve out one's path. After a moment, Oliver broke the silence. You know, when I first left the village, I was terrified. I didn't show it, but I was afraid I'd fail, that all the effort I put in would amount to nothing. But I kept reminding myself that it wasn't about avoiding failure. It was about not letting failure stop me. It's something I think about often, especially when I take on new risks with my business. Jake looked at Oliver, appreciating the honesty. I guess we all feel that way sometimes, don't we? It's strange. For so long, I thought you had it all figured out. I thought success came naturally to people like you. But hearing you say that, it makes me realize we all have the same fears. The difference is whether we let those fears keep us standing still. Oliver smiled, a thoughtful look crossing his face. Exactly. It's not about having no fear, it's about moving forward despite it. That's what success really is, the courage to keep going, even when you're unsure. Jake felt a weight lift off his shoulders as he listened. He had always admired Oliver for his confidence and success, but now he realized they weren't so different after all. Both of them had faced challenges, and both had found a way to push through them, even when doubt and fear threatened to pull them back. As the sun dipped below the horizon, leaving a soft glow in the sky, Jake turned to Oliver with a renewed sense of determination. I think it's time for me to take another leap, he said. It's time to expand. I've been cautious, maybe a bit too cautious, but I don't want to fall back into the habit of waiting for things to happen. I want to keep building. Oliver nodded approvingly. That's the spirit. And if you need any help along the way, you know I'm always here. We've got each other's backs, just like we always have. Jake smiled, feeling a warmth that went beyond the coffee in his hands. He knew now that success wasn't just about reaching a destination. It was about the journey, the lessons learned, and the people who stood by your side. He had once envied Oliver, but now he realized that their different paths had both led them to the same truth. Life rewards those who take action, those who dare to step out of their comfort zones and pursue their dreams relentlessly. Those who dare to step out of their comfort zones and pursue their dreams relentlessly. Over the next few months, Jake put his plans into motion. He hired more workers, invested in better equipment, and began taking on larger projects. The expansion wasn't without its challenges. There were setbacks, mistakes, and moments of frustration. But through it all, Jake kept pushing forward, determined to succeed. He often sought advice from Oliver, who had become more than just a friend. He was a mentor, a confidant, someone who understood the ups and downs of building something from nothing. Together, they navigated the complexities of business and life, always reminding each other of the lessons they had learned along the way. In time, Jake's handyman business became one of the most trusted names in the region. His clients respected him not just for his skills, but for his honesty, work ethic, and the way he treated his employees. He wasn't just a business owner. He was a leader, someone who inspired those around him to work hard and believe in themselves. And as for Oliver, his cafe and bookstore flourished, becoming a beloved gathering place for the community. It wasn't just a business, it was a symbol of what could be achieved with passion, vision, and the willingness to take risks. One evening, many years later, Jake and Oliver found themselves once again sitting by the river, watching the sunset, just as they had done so many times before. The village had changed over the years, growing in ways they had never imagined. But their friendship had remained strong, a testament to the bond they had shared since childhood. As they sat there, reflecting on the lives they had built, Jake smiled and turned to Oliver. You know, I used to think success was something that would happen to me one day, but now I see it's something we create for ourselves. Oliver grinned, raising his cup of coffee. To never waiting again, he said. Jake raised his cup in return, to going out and taking it. And as the sun dipped below the horizon once more, the two friends sat side by side, knowing that the journey was far from over, but also knowing that they had already succeeded in the most important way, by never giving up, by always moving forward, and by choosing to take control of their own destinies. As the years passed, Jake's business expanded beyond anything he had imagined. His small handyman service had grown into a full-scale construction and renovation company that served not just their village, but surrounding towns as well. He employed dozens of workers and had established a reputation for being reliable, honest, and dedicated. Jake, once the boy who waited for success to find him, had become the man who sought it out and earned it. Oliver's cafe and bookstore also thrived. It became a cultural hub for the village, a place where locals gathered not just for coffee or books, but for conversations, ideas, and community events. Oliver had a way of bringing people together, creating a space where everyone felt welcome. His success wasn't measured in profits alone. It was in the connections he made and the lives he touched. One autumn evening, the village held a festival to celebrate its growth. Jake and Oliver were both there, standing amidst a crowd of villagers and newcomers alike, watching the festivities. The sound of laughter filled the air, mingling with the music and the scent of roasted chestnuts from the street vendors. Children ran through the streets, their faces painted, while couples and families mingled, enjoying the warmth of the fire pits set up along the main square. As the evening grew late, the crowd began to thin, but Jake and Oliver remained, sitting at a small table outside the cafe. They had been quiet for a while, content to watch the world around them. The firelight flickered, casting long shadows on the cobblestone street, and the air carried a crispness that hinted at the approaching winter. "You ever think about where we started?" Jake asked, breaking the comfortable silence. His voice was thoughtful, his eyes distant, as if he were sifting through old memories. Oliver leaned back in his chair, smiling at the question. "All the time. It's funny, isn't it? We were just two kids in a village, dreaming about what our lives might look like, not knowing where we'd end up." Jake nodded slowly. "I used to think success was something that would come on its own, like, if you just waited long enough, it'd find you. But now I realize it was always about action. The moment I stopped waiting and started working towards something, everything changed." Oliver took a sip of his coffee, his eyes reflecting the same contemplative mood. "It's a lesson we both had to learn in our own way. I left the village because I thought I had to escape to find success. But looking back, I see that success was never about where I was. It was about what I did and how I kept pushing forward. In the end, it wasn't the city that made me successful. It was my drive, the risks I took, and the belief that I could build something meaningful." Jake glanced at him, smiling. "You were always the one who seemed to know what you wanted." Oliver laughed softly. "I knew I wanted more, but that didn't mean I always knew how to get there. I stumbled a lot along the way, made mistakes, doubted myself. But that's all part of it, isn't it? The mistakes, the doubts, you just keep going, and eventually things fall into place." The two friends fell quiet again, watching as the last of the festival goers drifted away. The night felt calm, peaceful, like a reflection of the balance they had both found in their lives. They had both achieved so much, but their success wasn't defined by wealth or status. It was in the fulfillment they felt from the work they did, the lives they had built, and the impact they had on those around them. "You know," Jake said after a long pause, "I've been thinking about something lately." Oliver raised an eyebrow, curious. "What's that?" Jake hesitated for a moment, then spoke. "I've been thinking about giving back. For so many years, I focused on building my business, on making a living. But now that I've reached a place where I'm comfortable, I want to do more. Maybe help younger people who are in the same place I was. Teach them what I've learned, give them the opportunities I didn't have." Oliver's smile widened. "That's a great idea. You've got so much to offer, Jake. Your story alone would inspire so many people. And the skills you've built over the years, I think you'd make a great mentor." Jake felt a sense of warmth in Oliver's words. "It just feels like the right thing to do. I've worked hard, but I didn't do it alone. There were people along the way who helped me, gave me advice, believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Maybe it's time for me to do the same for someone else." Oliver nodded in agreement. "I think that's the true measure of success. Not just what we achieve, but how we help others achieve their own dreams." In the weeks that followed, Jake began to put his plan into action. He set up a small apprenticeship program, taking on a few young people from the village and nearby towns who wanted to learn the trade. Some were fresh out of school, unsure of what they wanted to do, while others were looking for a second chance, a way to turn their lives around. Jake became not just a boss, but a mentor, teaching them not only the practical skills of construction, but also the values of hard work, integrity, and perseverance. Oliver, too, continued to give back to the community through his café. He started hosting free events, book readings, workshops, and talks, where people could come to learn, share ideas, and connect with one another. His cafe had always been more than just a business to him. It was a place where ideas could grow, where people from all walks of life could come together. Over time, the impact of Jake and Oliver's efforts began to ripple through the village. The young people who had apprenticed with Jake went on to start their own businesses, using the skills and knowledge they had gained to build something of their own. Oliver's cafe became a hub for creativity and innovation, sparking new ideas and ventures that benefited the entire community. One evening, after a long day of work, Jake and Oliver found themselves once again sitting by the river, watching the sunset. The village had changed over the years, and so had they. But the river remained the same, a steady reminder of the passage of time and the constancy of change. As they sat in comfortable silence, Jake turned to Oliver and said, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we had stayed the same? If we had never taken those chances, never decided to go after what we wanted?" Oliver smiled thoughtfully. "I think about it sometimes, but I don't dwell on it, because we didn't stay the same. We grew, we changed, and we made something of our lives. That's all that matters." Jake nodded, feeling the weight of those words settle within him. "Yeah, we did, and I'm glad we did." And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in a warm, golden glow, the two friends sat side by side, knowing that they had lived their lives on their own terms. They hadn't waited for success to find them. They had gone out and taken it. And in doing so, they had found something even more valuable, a life of purpose, fulfillment, and friendship. As the village's transformation continued, Jake and Oliver found themselves at the heart of it all. They were no longer just two boys with dreams. They were men who had lived out their ambitions, each in their own way, while staying true to the values that had guided them. Jake's apprenticeship program took off, becoming a model for other towns. He taught not just carpentry, plumbing, and construction, but also the life skills that came with hard work and perseverance. Many of his apprentices went on to start their own businesses, grateful for the lessons they'd learned. One by one, Jake watched these young men and women succeed, and each time he felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He saw himself in them, people who had once waited for life to happen, but had learned to seize the moment. Oliver, too, was finding new ways to serve the community. His cafe and bookstore became a haven for local artists and writers. He hosted open mic nights, poetry readings, and small concerts, giving the village a vibrant cultural life. People would come not just to sip coffee, but to share their stories, ideas, and dreams. His cafe wasn't just a business. It had become a gathering place, a space for growth and creativity. One autumn evening, much like the ones they had shared over the years, Jake and Oliver sat on the hill overlooking the village, the same spot they had visited countless times since their youth. The village below was lit up with the warm glow of lanterns, as the townspeople celebrated yet another festival. It had become a yearly tradition to celebrate the growth and unity that had defined their small community. "You ever think about how far we've come?" Jake asked, his voice quiet, reflective. Oliver chuckled softly. "All the time. I think about that kid you used to be, the one who was always waiting for something to happen, and now look at you, you've built something incredible." Jake smiled, nodding. "I was waiting for a long time, wasn't I? I didn't realize that success doesn't just come to you. You have to go out and take it. You taught me that." Oliver shook his head. "You learned it yourself. I may have given you a push, but you did the hard work. I was always impressed with how you turned things around. You didn't just build a business, you built a life, Jake, and you're giving back, helping others find their way." Jake glanced at his friend, grateful. "I've learned a lot from you, Oliver. I wouldn't have gotten here without you reminding me that waiting for success doesn't work. It's about action, about moving forward, even when you're scared or unsure." Oliver smiled, but there was a seriousness to his tone as he spoke next. "You know, success can look different for everyone. For some, it's about money. For others, it's about making an impact. but I've come to realize it's about finding meaning in what you do, and we've both found that in our own ways. Jake nodded in agreement. Yeah, I think you're right. It's not just about the outcome, it's about the journey, the growth, the struggles, the lessons. That's what makes it worthwhile. They sat in silence for a while, watching as the festival lights twinkled below, the laughter and music carrying on the breeze. The village had grown in ways they never imagined, but the heart of it remained the same, rooted in community, hard work, and the friendships that sustained it. As the night deepened, Oliver turned to Jake with a mischievous grin. You know, I was thinking, maybe it's time for us to do something together. We've spent all these years building our own things, but what if we combined forces? Maybe open a new business, a cafe with a workshop attached. We could have your apprentices build the furniture, and I'll serve the coffee. Jake laughed, but the idea sparked something in him. You know, that's not such a bad idea. A place where people could come to learn and relax, get their hands dirty, and also enjoy the simple things. I like it. Oliver's grin widened. See, we've still got more to do, Jake. Success doesn't stop just because we've reached a certain point. There's always more to create, more to give. Jake felt a surge of excitement. Even after all these years, the thought of starting something new, something that combined both their passions, filled him with a sense of purpose. It reminded him that the journey wasn't over, not by a long shot. Let's do it, Jake said finally. Let's create something that combines everything we've learned. Oliver raised his coffee cup, a twinkle in his eye, to not waiting for anything. Jake clinked his mug against Oliver's and smiled, to going out and taking it. The next few months were spent planning their new venture. They found a perfect location, a spacious old barn on the edge of the village. With Oliver's vision for a cozy cafe and Jake's expertise in transforming the space, they set to work. Their apprentices helped renovate the barn, creating handcrafted tables and chairs, while Oliver sourced the best coffee and food. The space soon came alive, filled with warmth, creativity, and community. When the cafe and workshop finally opened, it became an immediate success. People came not just for the coffee or the furniture, but for the experience, the sense of being part of something bigger. They came to learn, to create, to share their stories. It was more than just a business. It was a place where dreams were nurtured and possibilities explored. Jake and Oliver had found yet another way to leave their mark on the village, to give back in a way that felt true to who they were. They had chased success on their own terms and had helped others do the same. Their partnership, rooted in years of friendship and mutual respect, had blossomed into something that would continue to grow long after they were gone. And so as the years went on, Jake and Oliver continued to sit on that hill overlooking the village, watching the sun set on their home. They had stopped waiting for success long ago, and in doing so, they had found a life filled with purpose, fulfillment, and the deep satisfaction that comes from knowing you've made a difference. Success hadn't come to them. They had gone out and taken it. And now they passed that wisdom on to everyone who came through their doors, reminding them that life is what you make of it. Don't wait for success to find you. Go and take it.